Winter is approaching and the forecast is grim. AccuWeather's 2024 to 2025 U.S. winter forecast predicts a season similar to last year's record warmth, but with intermittent waves of frigid air and increased snowfall. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration anticipates wetter-than-average conditions for the northern U.S., particularly the Pacific Northwest and Great Lakes regions, while the southern states may experience drier conditions. Energy prices are set to soar. Natural gas prices have surged 18% this week, reaching a one-year high due to expectations of colder weather and potential disruptions to European liquefied natural gas (LNG) supplies. Analysts warn that higher natural gas prices will lead to increased electricity costs for U.S. consumers. The U.S. Energy Information Administration (EIA) forecasts that the Henry Hub natural gas spot price will rise in the coming months, averaging $2.80 per million British thermal units in the first quarter of 2025 following seasonal patterns. The threat of La Niña looms, with a 57% chance of developing between now and December, potentially continuing through March 2025. La Niña is associated with extreme weather events including floods, droughts, and increased hurricane activity, which could have significant implications for global agriculture and energy demand. Here are the 8 winter survival essentials you can't afford to miss. 1. Stockpile hard red winter wheat. Winter isn't just about bundling up and riding out the cold. It's about sustaining life when the elements threaten to rob you of everything you take for granted. If you think you're prepared with a pantry of instant noodles and sugary snacks, think again. The harsh reality is that processed foods will sap your energy, weaken your immune system, and leave you vulnerable to the bitter cold. What you need is something reliable, versatile, and above all, packed with essential nutrients. Enter hard red winter wheat, a staple of the American diet that's quietly becoming a powerhouse of winter survival essentials. As inflation skyrockets and climate change disrupts agricultural patterns, hard red winter wheat is about to become more expensive than you've ever seen. This wheat is the foundation of everything from bread and pasta to cereals and tortillas, and without it, your winter pantry is a shell of its potential. Stock up now because a bad harvest next month or a supply chain hiccup could see prices soar beyond what you can afford. Why hard red winter wheat? It's not just a grain, it's a survival goldmine. High in fiber, protein, and essential nutrients like iron, zinc, and B vitamins, it fuels your body during the relentless energy drain of freezing temperatures. This wheat can be stored for decades under the right conditions. Pack it in airtight Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, and you've got a shelf-stable lifeline that can be ground into flour, sprouted for greens, or cooked whole for a hearty porridge. Its versatility means you're never stuck eating the same boring meal, even when options are limited. And let's talk about what happens if you don't have this essential. Imagine a multi-day power outage where your frozen pizzas are useless and your instant ramen leaves you cold and malnourished. Without the dense caloric energy of whole grains like hard red winter wheat, you'll burn through your body's reserves trying to stay warm. Your immune system will falter, and even a minor cold could spiral into a life-threatening illness when medical help is delayed by snowed-in roads or overwhelmed hospitals. But it's not just about nourishment. Having a stash of hard red winter wheat means independence. When others are scrambling for overpriced bread or canned goods at ransacked grocery stores, you'll be milling your own flour and baking warm, nutritious loaves that feed your family's bodies and spirits. In times of crisis, this is more than survival, it's a psychological advantage, a taste of normalcy when the world outside is anything but. 2. High-calorie survival fats. When winter strikes and temperatures plummet, your body enters a battle for survival, burning calories at an alarming rate just to keep warm. This isn't the time to skimp on energy-rich foods. This is the time to embrace the most calorically dense, shelf-stable substance you can stockpile: survival fats. If you think you can survive on the meager fat content of your standard pantry items, you're setting yourself up for disaster. Butter, ghee, lard, coconut oil, and peanut butter aren't luxuries, they're lifelines. Without enough fat in your diet during extreme cold, your body will cannibalize itself for energy, leaving you weaker, colder, and dangerously vulnerable. Let's get real about the role of fats. These aren't just extra calories, they're your body's built-in insulation and energy reserve. They help absorb critical fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, which are essential for maintaining immunity, bone health, and skin integrity in harsh winter conditions. In sub-zero temperatures, fats are your fuel for staying warm, healing from injuries, and fighting off sickness. The mistake most people make is assuming they don't need to prioritize fat stockpiling because there's always something in the fridge. Guess what? When the power goes out and your perishable foods rot, your fridge won't be the safety net you're banking on. Ghee and lard are kings in winter survival because of their shelf stability and high smoke points, making them perfect for cooking when fuel sources are limited. Peanut butter and nut butters pack a dense punch of calories and protein, offering quick energy in a compact, easily stored jar. Coconut oil isn't just for cooking. It can be used as a skin protectant against chapping and frostbite, or as a fire starter in a pinch. And butter, frozen or canned, transforms into a morale booster, turning bland rations into palatable meals that keep spirits high in a crisis. If you don't have these fats stockpiled, your energy levels will crash. You'll feel the cold more intensely, your immune system will deteriorate, and even small exertions, like shoveling snow to access your emergency supplies, will feel like running a marathon. Worse, when hunger sets in and you're relying on carbohydrates alone, you'll experience dangerous blood sugar spikes and crashes that impair your judgment in critical moments. Stockpile fats now and stockpile them in abundance. Vacuum seal ghee or freeze butter for long-term storage. Store lard in airtight containers and keep jars of peanut butter in every survival kit you own. These aren't extras, these are non-negotiables. In a blackout, when every calorie counts, these fats will do more than sustain you. They'll save you. 3. Wood and fuel supplies. Without a reliable heat source, winter will kill you. Period. When the power goes out and your central heating system is nothing more than a useless hunk of metal, you'll quickly learn that staying warm isn't just about comfort. It's about staying alive. Yet, most people grossly underestimate the amount of wood, propane, or alternative fuels they'll need to survive a prolonged winter outage. If you think a few fireplace logs or a half-full propane tank will suffice, you're deluding yourself into a false sense of security. First, wood. This isn't the time for decorative bundles from the grocery store that burn out in 30 minutes. You need seasoned hardwoods like oak, hickory, or maple. Woods that burn hot and long, producing the kind of heat that can warm a room and keep hypothermia at bay. Softwoods like pine or spruce are a waste of time in survival scenarios. They burn too quickly and leave you scrambling for more. Stockpile enough wood to last at least 2 weeks of continuous burning. That's a minimum of a half cord per week, depending on your climate. Stack it properly, off the ground, covered but ventilated, and don't assume you'll have time to gather it during a storm. By then it's too late. Now let's talk propane. If you've got a propane heater or stove, stockpile tanks like your life depends on it, because it does. Each tank provides about 10-12 hours of heat on a medium setting. Do the math for a multi-day outage. But don't stop there. Propane alone won't save you if your tanks run out or become inaccessible. A backup kerosene heater or alcohol stove can bridge the gap when other fuel sources are exhausted. Kerosene, while pungent, stores well and burns hot, making it an invaluable tool for emergency heating. If you run out of fuel in the dead of winter, you're done. Your body will burn through its fat reserves to stay warm. Your extremities will start to numb, and frostbite will creep in. Worse, the cold will drain your mental clarity, leaving you unable to make rational decisions about your next steps. If you have children or elderly family members, the stakes are even higher. Their bodies lose heat faster, and they're less equipped to survive the cold. Preparation doesn't stop at stockpiling. Test your heating systems before a crisis hits. Make sure your wood stove is venting properly and your propane heater is functioning safely. Invest in carbon monoxide detectors because improperly ventilated heating systems can poison you faster than the cold. And for the love of survival, ensure you have fire-starting tools in abundance: matches, lighters, fire starters, and kindling. You can have all the wood in the world, but without a way to light it, it's as useless as snow on a stovetop. 4. Emergency food preservation tools. When winter storms cut off power and leave your freezer defrosting into a useless puddle, what happens to the hundreds of dollars worth of food you painstakingly stockpiled? Without a strategy to preserve perishable food, all your efforts will rot away, leaving you with nothing but regret and hunger. This is where emergency food preservation tools become non-negotiable. Dehydrators, vacuum sealers, and manual canning tools aren't luxury kitchen gadgets. They're the difference between wasted resources and long-term survival. Your freezer is not a survival tool, it's a ticking time bomb. The moment the power grid fails, the countdown begins. Frozen meats, vegetables, and leftovers will hold out for maybe 24-48 hours, but after that, you'll either need to eat them all or lose them entirely. That's where a portable, off-grid dehydrator or solar drying rack comes in. Dehydrating food reduces weight, preserves nutrients, and extends shelf life without refrigeration. Slice those thawing apples, strip those chicken breasts, and dry them before they're lost to bacteria and decay. Vacuum sealers are equally critical. Foods exposed to air spoil faster, period. Vacuum sealing preserves freshness by removing oxygen, whether it's grains, beans, jerky, or even powdered milk. When the storm ends and prices spike at the grocery store, your vacuum-sealed stockpile will keep you fed without relying on overpriced, scarce supplies. Pair it with oxygen absorbers for the longest possible shelf life. But let's address the real champion of food preservation: canning. A manual canning kit is your weapon against waste when all else fails. Invest in a heavy-duty pressure canner that can handle meats, soups, and stews, not just high-acid fruits and jams. Know how to sanitize jars and create proper seals, because botulism is a silent killer, and a single mistake can render your survival food deadly. If you think canning is too time-consuming, ask yourself how much time you'll have when you're weak from hunger and scrambling to find your next meal. Without food preservation tools, every ounce of spoiled food during a crisis is a loss you can't afford. You'll watch helplessly as your resources dwindle, knowing you had the means to save them, but chose not to prepare. Stockpile these tools, learn how to use them now, not in the middle of a storm, and ensure you have backup methods like pickling, smoking, or even fermenting. Winter doesn't wait for you to figure it out. 5. Insulated water storage. Water is life, but in winter it's also a liability. When temperatures plummet, uninsulated pipes burst, leaving your home flooded and your access to water destroyed. Even worse, once the pipes are frozen, you can't just thaw them on demand. Without water for drinking, cooking, or sanitation, you'll descend into chaos faster than you think. And no, a couple of bottled water packs from the store won't cut it. You need insulated water storage tanks, and you need them now. Let's be clear. Water doesn't just disappear in winter, it transforms into a solid block of useless ice. If you're relying on outdoor tanks, exposed faucets, or an unheated basement, you're one cold snap away from disaster. Insulated water storage containers are your only hope. Look for BPA-free, heavy-duty barrels with built-in thermal insulation or insulated covers. Place them in the warmest, most central location of your home to minimize freezing risk. But what about portable options? Collapsible, insulated water bladders or military-grade water containers are critical for mobility. If you need to leave your home, you can't rely on finding drinkable water en route. These containers should be paired with insulation wraps or even wool blankets to keep the liquid from freezing in transit. Now let's talk about redundancy. Water freezes faster than you think, especially in extreme cold. What's your plan when your stored water solidifies? You need a portable propane or butane stove to heat small quantities for drinking or melting snow. And don't assume melted snow is safe to drink. Without a filtration system, discussed earlier, or boiling, it could be full of harmful bacteria and chemicals. Here's where the unprepared falter. They forget to consider water for hygiene. Washing your hands, cleaning utensils, or flushing a toilet isn't optional. It's a necessity. If you don't stock enough water for these purposes, diseases like dysentery and foodborne illnesses will take hold, compounding the dangers of a brutal winter. At a minimum, store 1 gallon of water per person per day for 2 weeks, and double that if you can. 6. Backup sanitation systems, because filth is the fastest killer. When winter storms knock out your power, plumbing, and access to running water, your home can go from a sanctuary to a breeding ground for disease in mere days. Let's get one thing straight. Without a proper sanitation system, you're setting yourself up for a biohazard nightmare. Human waste doesn't just disappear when the toilet stops flushing. It accumulates, bringing with it the risk of cholera, dysentery, and other life-threatening illnesses. If you think a few rolls of toilet paper and a bucket will suffice, you're dangerously mistaken. First, you need an emergency toilet setup. Forget the flimsy plastic buckets sold in camping stores. They won't cut it for long-term use. Invest in a sturdy, portable composting toilet, or at least a heavy-duty bucket system with a secure lid. Line it with thick contractor-grade garbage bags and stockpile plenty of extras. For odor control and waste breakdown, keep a supply of sawdust, kitty litter, or composting materials on hand. These aren't luxuries, they're essential to keeping your living space habitable. Hand hygiene is another critical component of survival. Without running water, washing your hands becomes a challenge, and let's be brutally honest. A single lapse in hygiene can spread illness through your entire household. Stock up on alcohol-based hand sanitizers, antibacterial wipes, and waterless soap. But don't stop there. A portable sink or a gravity-fed water dispenser can give you a functional hand-washing station, even when your pipes are frozen solid. Pair it with biodegradable soap to avoid contaminating your water supply. During a blackout, regular garbage collection will likely halt, leaving you with mountains of waste and nowhere to put it. Without a plan, the stench alone will become unbearable, not to mention the risk of attracting rodents and insects. Heavy-duty trash bags, duct tape, and a designated outdoor area for waste storage are non-negotiable. If you can, burn combustible waste in a controlled fire pit. But remember to separate toxic materials like plastics that release harmful fumes. 7. Emergency communication devices, because isolation is deadly. Winter storms isolate you. The roads are impassable, power lines are down, and suddenly, your lifeline to the outside world, the internet, phone service, even your neighbors, is severed. If you think you can ride out a prolonged storm without reliable communication, you're fooling yourself. Isolation doesn't just make you feel alone. It actively sabotages your ability to get help, gather information, and make decisions that could save your life. Your smartphone is useless in a prolonged blackout. Batteries drain, cell towers fail, and without electricity to recharge your devices, that sleek piece of technology becomes nothing more than an expensive paperweight. This is where emergency communication devices come into play. Start with a hand crank or solar-powered emergency radio capable of receiving NOAA weather alerts. But don't settle for basic models. Opt for one with two-way communication features that allow you to send distress signals or talk to rescue teams. Next, invest in a set of long-range two-way radios. When the grid fails and cell towers are down, these devices become your only means of staying in touch with family members, neighbors, or emergency responders. Choose models with a range of at least 10 miles and rechargeable batteries. If you live in a rural area, consider a ham radio system, which provides even greater range and the ability to communicate across vast distances. You'll need a license to operate one, but in an emergency, that connection could mean the difference between life and death. But here's the real kicker. Communication is useless if you don't have a power source to keep it running. Pair your radios with portable solar panels or a high-capacity battery bank designed for off-grid use. Test these systems regularly and make sure every member of your household knows how to operate them. In the chaos of a storm, the last thing you want is to fumble with unfamiliar equipment. In a winter emergency, information is survival. Without it, you'll have no idea how long the storm will last, where to find shelter, or whether it's safe to leave your home. You'll be blind to evacuation orders, supply distributions, and life-saving updates. And if someone in your household is injured or falls ill, the inability to call for help could be catastrophic. Emergency communication devices aren't optional. They're your only link to the outside world when winter isolates you. Stock them, learn to use them, and never assume you'll figure it out when the storm hits. Winter doesn't care about your excuses. When the snow piles up and the lights go out, those who can communicate survive, and those who can't are left behind. 8. Heavy-duty insulated shelter solutions. When winter storms bear down with their icy grip, your cozy home could transform into an Arctic prison. Think your modern insulation and double-paned windows are enough to keep the cold at bay? Think again. When the power goes out and your heating system fails, your house becomes nothing more than a glorified icebox. The temperature inside can drop to dangerously low levels within hours, and without proper insulated shelter solutions, your survival odds plummet. This isn't just about layering up or huddling under a blanket. It's about creating an impenetrable barrier against the relentless cold. First, let's talk about heavy-duty insulation. Your primary goal is to preserve whatever heat you have and concentrate it in a small, livable space. Mylar emergency blankets aren't just for show. They reflect up to 90% of your body heat back at you. Line the walls of a small room with these, or drape them over makeshift frames to create a heat-retaining cocoon. Pair them with heavy wool blankets or insulated curtains to block drafts from doors and windows. Foam insulation panels, cut to size and placed over windows, are a must-have for keeping the frigid air from seeping in. But what happens if your house becomes uninhabitable? A collapsed roof from snow weight, frozen pipes bursting into floods, or structural damage can force you out of your main shelter. This is where having a backup insulated tent or portable shelter becomes critical. Opt for an all-season military-grade tent designed for sub-zero conditions, preferably one with an integrated floor and reflective insulation. These aren't your average camping tents. They're built to trap heat, withstand high winds, and keep snow out. A portable tent heater is a must-have companion to this setup, but here's the catch. You can't rely on a heater alone. Fuel runs out, and the cold doesn't care about your dwindling propane tanks. Layer your shelter with insulating materials like sleeping pads, wool rugs, or even straw to create a buffer between you and the frozen ground. Sub-zero rated sleeping bags are non-negotiable. They'll be the only thing standing between you and hypothermia if your heater fails. Let's address another overlooked reality: condensation. In an airtight shelter, your own breath can create moisture that freezes and makes your environment even colder. Ventilation is critical. Look for shelters with adjustable vents or add a small battery-powered fan to keep air circulating. Without a proper insulated shelter, the cold will win. It seeps through walls, crawls under doors, and invades every corner of your space. The moment you start feeling the chill in your bones, your body is already losing the fight to hypothermia. Your mental sharpness fades, your extremities go numb, and soon, even the simplest tasks, like lighting a fire or drinking water, become impossible. Thank you for watching.